lunes, ya. 1, 2, 3, pasa el guaro. Y sin estrés, que es caro. Te gustan los chicos malos. Y se te ve que ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Y ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Y ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Yeah. Esa Julieta no necesita su Romeo. A esas caderas todo le creo. Ya está, esta manera de perreo. Bájale al fuego porque esto se puso feo. Aquí un paisita con la de Ponce. Ella la mala y apelando el bronce. Yo flow Maluma, tu flow Beyoncé. Yo pega esto pa' que sientas el roce. Con su flow, gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Con su flow, gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Ella como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Ella como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Yo le doy un flow a mi bebé la pupi. Le doy un guarito pa' que deje el tutti frutti. Pa' que no se estrese y solo me va a hacer booty. Izquierda, derecha con su movimiento sutil. Nos noquea como lo haya en el ring. Nunca pasa moda como la era de los memes. De toda la peli ella es la mejor sin. La bebé esta cara y eso que no usa Supreme. Con su flow, gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Con su flow, gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca, baby. Presentando pa'
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Hope you're all doing well. Please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, please. Let's get straight into it because today is going to be a relatively long podcast. I am going to read out Harry's entire statement in court today, and it is quite long, so I just want to get straight to it. But welcome everyone. Before we do get into that, hope you're all doing well. Verda, you said prayers for Miss Cookies and Cream and her family, the loss of her father. Oh my goodness. Prayers for them indeed. Please everyone send your prayers. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know about that. If stuff like that does happen, you all do feel free to message me on Twitter. Twitter's probably better to message me on because I don't often check my inbox. But yeah, I hope Cookies and Cream and her family can have some healing time. And thank you for letting me know, Verda. Thank you so much. I love that you all keep in touch with what each other are doing and support each other. Thank you to Lizzie and to Andrew Bodie for the super stickers. Much appreciated. Thank you, both of you. Would not be able to do this without you all. Sorry, folks, had to put that on pause for a second because there's actually a bit of a thunderstorm here in Tbilisi. Yeah. So the thunder in the background. Lizzie, you would like to know the name of the song? Oh, let me try and get it for you now. Is it? So I think it is. Just give me one sec. Because I get the music from Epidemic Sound, but sometimes I forget to note down the song. I think it's Newly by, who is this? Jordan? Give me one sec. Yes. So, yeah, this is what it is. Got too many tabs open. Okay, so it's called Lou Ni by Jordan. This is from Epidemic Sound, so I'm pretty sure that you can download it on iTunes as well. So there you go. That's the name of the song. Glad you liked the songs. Also, folks, I did order the tastiest dessert because I just could not wait and I didn't want to go to sleep without eating this dessert. And so it's probably going to arrive midway through the podcast. So please just do bear with me because if I wait until after the podcast to order it, the place might be closed. Right, let's get into the. Was there any other updates before I? Holly Wilbury gave the most ridiculous and vomit-inducing statement regarding Philip Schofield, but I'm not going to even bother with it because I feel like I've talked enough about Philip Schofield. But it is floating around on the Twitterverse if you know, if you want to talk to yourself by listening to it. One of the things that annoyed me about her statement, though, I will say this. I'm not going to play it, but I will say this. She said, one of the things that she said was, I know you are all, as in the viewers, concerned with how all sides of the situation are feeling. She did the whole all sides, both sides. No, there are no all sides, both sides that we're concerned about. We are only concerned about the individual who was targeted as a young man. That's who we're concerned about. That's it. But yes, the pity party continues for Philip Schofield, and I'm just not having it. That's all I'm going to say about that today. Kat Harlem, thank you so much for the super chat. Yes, praying Prince Harry and all other claimants prevail. And let me also just say, before we get into anything else, I was just listening to a clip from Sky News, and one of the experts was saying that Harry actually did really well, he presented himself very well, and it was actually the newspaper group who was all over the place today. And the Sky News presenter who was interviewing this guy, she looked so disappointed at the fact that he said that. Let's see. All right. Don't think there's any other comments, so let's get to it, shall we? And yes, this is not only the trial of the century. I mean, no British royal has taken the stand for 130 years. And it's like Harry's whole life has been leading up to this moment. When he finally gets control over his narrative that has been controlled for him literally from the time he was a baby. But this moment right here, when it was so obvious that he was nothing more than a spare, than a prop for the establishment, has got to have been one of the most hurtful moments of his entire life. And I'm sure in that moment, Harry was just thinking, I'm going to make sure that I avenge my mother. There is no way that little boy in that picture was never going to do something to make sure that his mother got justice. Yes, Rhonda, when you're standing in your truth, you have nothing to be stressed about. Indeed. And it seems like he was just very confident. He spoke well from what I've been reading. And he showed up to the courthouse house, as you could see in that clip, very confident looking as well. Yeah, Valerie, you saw it, right? She seems so disappointed. It's like she was convinced that she was just going to trash him. And of course, let's not forget, this isn't just about Harry. It's about other claimants. It's about press intrusion and this disgusting culture that the British press have created. And it's not, do you know, it's not even about just about the misinformation and just the culture of trash in the news that the tabloids have created. It's also just, I feel, a culture of complete and utter misery in the UK. What the tabloids do, the way in which they create um this kind of tall poppy syndrome where you're not allowed to rise above everyone, and if you do, will tear you down. And yet the people who haven't necessarily worked for their wealth and just own all the land and own all the wealth, because of who their families were or because of certain privileges that they have, it's okay for those people to have wealth, but it's not okay for you to have wealth or be successful. And we saw that with the way they've treated Meghan, only self-made uh, woman to ever come into this family. But I do believe, in terms of like the world wider culture in the UK, the tabloids reinforce this resentment towards self-starters and self-success. And if you are somebody that rises above and out of your station, out of your class group, they're there to just knock you down. One of the big revelations that came out today was Piers Morgan, Piers Moron here, and his phone hacking of Diana's messages and private correspondence. And somebody posted this on Twitter. This is actually a snippet from Piers Morgan's book himself. And this is what he had to say about the young princes, particularly William. William was equally upset by the constant prying eyes. Why do they have to chase my mother around so much? Why? It's unfair on her. I was torn between genuine concern for the young man, protecting his mum so gallantly, and a sense of foreboding for him, that one day it will be him, not his mother, who will be chased just as aggressively. How do you explain to a 13-year-old boy that he sells papers and therefore he's a valuable commodity to photographers and editors like me? They literally just saw those boys as pieces of meat to get their pennies. And I think it's fantastic that Piers Morgan was stupid enough to put this in his own book. Not because it necessarily will help in court. I don't know if it will, or if this is even evidence that's being presented. But it is otherwise, in terms of the court of public opinion anyway, maybe not so much the court of law, but the court of public opinion does matter these days. This is very incriminating for Piers Morgan. And I also think about the fact that this is the culture that William and Kate are setting their children up for, and what Harry and Meghan wanted to take their children out of. I did what before I actually get into reading the whole statement, because it is very long. I did want to just read one particular part because I think it's very, very powerful. So on Piers Morgan, he says, as a consequence of me bringing my Mirror Group claim, both myself and my wife have been subjected to a barrage of horrific personal attacks and intimidation from Piers Morgan, who was the editor of the Daily Mirror between 1995 and 2004. And do you know what? I absolutely love that this is the first and the only time, other than when Meghan filed a complaint for his comments about suicide, this is the only time Harry has addressed Piers Morgan in any capacity in the court of law. And for all of Piers Morgan screaming and yelling, the only time he gets any acknowledgement from Harry is in the court of law, not even directly. But he said this also as part of his wider statement. But I wanted to read it out before I get into the whole thing because I thought it was one of the most powerful things that he said. He said, speaking in his witness statement, the Duke of Sussex said, on a national level, at the moment, our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government, both of which I believe are rock bottom. Harry Mountbatten Windsor, this man came out swinging because where is the lie? And as I was going through social media, the feedback from people generally was, I agree. I mean, the country is in an absolute state. He says, democracy fails when your press fails to scrutinize and hold the government accountable and instead choose to get into bed with them so they can ensure the status quo. I may not have a role within the institution, but as a member of the British royal family and as a soldier upholding important values, I feel there's a responsibility to expose this criminality in the name of public interest. The country and the British public deserve to know the depths of what was actually happening then and indeed now. We will be better off for it. Shots fired. I wish I had my my boom boom sound effects. So I could do like real shots fired because wow. What a powerful statement. And from a member of the British royal family. Calling out the government. Like, wow. And interestingly enough, there really hasn't been any response from government because they're scared. Can you imagine people who are literally sitting in Westminster are more scared of hitting back at the press than Harry is? And those politicians who are sitting in Westminster have no backbone at all. They cannot stand up to the press because so many of them, let's be honest, are hiding their own secrets. It is actually just criminal that I think a lot of people who are in politics, especially the higher ranking positions, a lot of them just get into politics for the power and the status to make a lot of money. I mean, the government right now is just an avenue for a lot of people to give their friends contracts. You saw this during the Mr. C pandemic. They're in it for their own game. They're not really in it to help the people and improve people's lives. And so you then have a situation where very dodgy people get into politics, dodgy people with a lot of skeletons in their closet, and then they have to toe the line to people like Murdoch and Rothermere. Right. I'll go through your comments and then we'll get into it because it's a long statement and I do want to read it out. And we will dissect it piece by piece. Thank you so much, Sarah S, for the 3 copies. Much appreciated. Yes. Well, Harry's got all the truth to tell. Yeah, truth for dilly, fire, fire. I mean, we don't really have. Okay, I'm not going to say we don't have journalists. We do. They're just not given the attention that they should be given. And this is why it's so important to support outlets like Byline Investigates, Hacked Off. They do a lot of good writing as well. And some of the more independent outlets that do great work. That's who we need to be supporting and giving the clicks and donations and subscriptions to. Rahini, at this point, I want to know what it would take to make Harry king. I mean, he's a king in spirit, right? I mean, right now, as all of this is going on, Charles is in Romania. Some king, he's run away from his kingdom, and it's his son that has balls of steel and is standing in court. I don't know where Camilla is. And Kate was out and about today, smiling and waving, grinning and grinning, doing her jazz hands. I don't know if they just said to her, "Oh, you better come out and wear a cute outfit, and then we'll put you on the front covers of the papers tomorrow and just try and ignore Harry. Try not to bring too much attention to this." William, I don't know where William is. Yes, Marina, media barons are financing their political careers, indeed. Right, let me just check how far my dessert is from my house before I get into the statement. Oh, it's another 5 minutes away. Okay, let me try and get this statement onto the screen. Share screen. Let's see. Oh dear. Aha. And is it possible for me to do? Yes. Let's try and get this a little bit bigger. And let's delete this from the screen. Don't want that there. All right, so here is Harry's statement. And as you can see, it is very, I think it's actually about, let's see. Whew, I think it's about 50 pages. We'll get through it. We'll get through it. And just make sure I don't miss my dessert. Okay. Right, we'll start reading it. Everybody ready? Let me also actually post it in the chat if anybody wants to have it on their phone while we're reading it through. There is the link. All right. Right, let's get started. So, HRH, Duke of Sussex and Mirror Group Newspapers Limited. Actually, before I get into it, I think there was something that I saw on Twitter that I wanted to mention. Let's have a look. There was something that someone tweeted. Let's have a look now. Oh, I think it was Miss Rebecca Barry. Okay, so she actually tweeted a little bit more of what was going on in the courthouse. Sorry, folks, I'm a little bit all over the place because there was a lot of stuff coming through today. Oh, so there was one point where I've got it. So there was one point where Harry says, "I am bringing this claim not because I hate the tabloid press or even necessarily a section of it, but in order to properly hold the people who have hijacked those privileges which come with being a member of the press to account for their actions, and that he feels a responsibility to expose the criminal activity in the name of public interest." There was one point where Harry was asked to raise his voice in court, and the barrister from the Mirror Group newspapers, Andrew Green, joked, "Not in anger, I hope. Hardy, hardy, ha ha. Not very funny." And I think there was also another part where, yes, this is the part that I was looking for. Sorry. Prince Harry was questioned about the revelations of his drug taking when he was a teenager. The MGN barrister puts to him that it was a matter of public interest. Harry then replied, "There is a difference between public interest and what interests the public." Boom. What a fantastic response. And the fact that there were people who were thriving off of reading about Harry's misery as a teenager. I just find that disgusting. And these are the same people who will sit there now with this fake outrage and fake concern about, "Oh, Meghan's taken Harry away. And, poor Harry, he's so sad." Y'all never cared about him. You never cared about him at all. Okay, let's get into it. Let me at least try and read this first page before my yummy donut arrives. Okay, I, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, um, will state as follows. Here we go. I make this statement in support of my claim for damages and other remedies against MGN Limited, the publishers of the Daily Mirror, the People, and the Sunday Mirror newspapers. The facts and matters set out in this witness statement derive from my own knowledge and are true, except where I indicate that the information derives from a third party, in which case it is true to the best of my knowledge and belief. The witness statement was prepared by my solicitors following a series of video calls with them. In this witness statement, I refer to documents which are listed at the end of the statement. These include 50 newspaper articles published by the defendant's newspapers which contain private and confidential information relating to me and my associates, which was not publicly known, and which I now understand might have been obtained unlawfully by the defendant, along with documents that have been disclosed in the course of my claim. So, just so you all know, one of the other things that Harry's team presented were um, receipts of private investigators, other bank statements, and also call logs as well. So they came with the receipts. Yeah, let's continue. Okay, so Harry goes on to my background. I was born into the British royal family on the 15th of September 1984 to my father, King Charles III, and my mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. I'm currently fifth in line to the throne. I was educated. Okay, let's skip that part. So he goes on to him and Meghan getting married and then him having his children. Okay, so let's skip to the next part, which is my relationship with the tabloid press. It is no secret that I have had and continue to have a very difficult relationship with the tabloid press in the UK. My experience as a member of the royal family, each of us gets cast into a specific role by the tabloid press. You start off as a blank canvas while they work out what kind of person you are and what kind of problems and temptations you might have. They then start to edge you towards playing the role or all roles that suit them best, which sells as many newspapers as possible, especially if you are the spare or the heir. You're either the playboy prince, the failure, the dropout, or in my case, the thicko, the cheat, the underage drinker, the irresponsible drug taker. The list goes on. As a teenager in my early 20s, I ended up feeling as though I was playing up a lot to the headlines and stereotypes that they wanted to pin on me, mainly because I thought that if they are printing this rubbish about me and people were believing it, I may as well do the crime, so to speak. It was a downward spiral whereby the tabloids would constantly try and coax me, a damaged young man, into trying something stupid that would make a good story and sell lots of newspapers. Looking back on it now, such behavior on their part was utterly vile. I mean, it was just abuse, institutional abuse of a very, very powerful group of people that just wanted him to play a role. Give me one sec, folks. Computer's playing up a bit. Okay, let's get back to it. Whilst they would, of course, report on my successes in life, it seemed to me that they took far greater pleasure in knocking me down time and time again. This extended to my relationships. I always felt as if the tabloids wanted me to be single, as I was much more interesting to them and sold more papers. Whenever I got into a relationship, they were very keen to report the details, but would then very quickly seek to try and break it up by putting as much strain on it and creating as much distrust as humanly possible, as I shall go into more detail later in the statement. This twisted objective is still pursued to this day, even though I am now married. Whenever I have been in a relationship, I have always tried to be the best partner that I possibly could, but every woman has her limit. Unfortunately, they are not just in a relationship with me, but the entire tabloid press as a third party. At no point did I have a girlfriend or a relationship with anyone without the tabloids getting involved and ultimately trying to ruin it using whatever unlawful means at their disposal. Again, I will go into this in more detail later in the statement. Of course, I accept my role within the royal family and know that every time I put on a suit and tie in order to carry out an official engagement, I'm going to get photographed because most of the press are always there. Even if I get papped on the way there or on the way back, then that's absolutely fine too because it's expected. But if the next day I want to go out and take my dog for a walk, I would expect some level of privacy, which unfortunately does not and never existed for me. Despite the common misconception, I was more than 5% funded by the taxpayer while I was a working royal in the UK, yet it felt as though the tabloid press thought they owned me absolutely and deserved to know everything there is to know about me, my life, my movements, and the lives of those people who came into my orbit. There also seems to be a real blurring of the lines in terms of what is public interest and what is of interest to the public. The tabloids concentrated in salacious stories about my relationships and so on to satisfy the latter while appearing to completely ignore the former as means of justifying their intrusion. I simply don't understand and never have how the inner private details of relationships, for example, could have anything to do with the well-being of society or the running of the country and therefore be in the public interest, or indeed how the use of voicemail interception and other unlawful information gathering techniques to uncover such private information could be either. I obviously understand why my relationships might be of interest to millions of tabloid readers, but that is something entirely different. What I complain of here is illegal or unlawful, and that is something which I feel incredibly strongly about, not just in a personal capacity, but as part of the role I have always tried to take as my duty to stand up to things which are wrong, and the public or people without the same resources should not have to accept or undergo. Right, on to the next part. Guys, my Bolt driver is lost. Like, I can see him on the next street. Like, bro, come to the next street. my donut's getting cold. Oh my gosh, he's on the next street. Outrageous. Oh. Okay, guys, I'm gonna put you on a 5-minute break, okay? While I go and find my donut. So sorry. It's how professional we keep it here at the Duchess of Success podcast. Anne has ordered her donut and the Bolt driver's on the wrong road. Okay, you go dance for a little bit and let's take a break before we come back, okay? Okay, guys, I'm back. My gosh, all that trouble for a bloody donut. He was on the wrong street. Anyway, it happens. Right, I put the kettle on. Do you know, it's probably cold now. Anyway, let's continue. Sorry, how are we doing? Is everyone left? uh, donuts are awesome, but we have to be careful. Too much sweet and be careful diabetes. Yeah, you only live once though, so you might as well just get all the donuts you can. Um, okay. Yes, it is cream filled. It's vanilla cream filled, actually. Right, let's get back to it, shall we? I'm gonna have to put timestamps for people who are watching on the replay. Okay, where were we now? We were on number 15, right? Yes. So, everyone can hear me okay, right? Okay. Right, so part 15. It even got to the stage where the tabloids would routinely publish articles about me that were often wrong, but put with snippets of truth, which I now think were most likely gleaned from voicemail interception or unlawful information gathering. Okay, I'm going to try and skim some parts so that we don't take too long reading it. He goes on to say, whatever advantage people claimed I had by walking into a room as Prince Harry was immediately flipped on its head because I was facing judgments and opinions based on what had been reported about me, true or not. I expected people to be thinking he's obviously going to fail the test because he's a thicko. If you were one of the examiners for the regular commissions board, for instance, then you are going to expect me to screw up, as you've already made an opinion before even meeting me based on tabloid reports. And can you imagine like how that would have made Harry feel, like walking around all the time, doubting yourself? And that type of pressure that William never had to have because it was automatically assumed, well, he's the future king, he's been groomed to be the future king. I mean, that just must eat at your soul and really feed your anxiety and paranoia. He goes on to say, I genuinely feel that in every relationship that I've ever had, that be friends, girlfriends, with family, or the army, there's always been a third party involved, namely the tabloid press. Having seen me grow up from a baby, being born into this contractual relationship without a choice, and scrutinize my every move, the tabloids have known the challenges and mental health struggles that I've had to deal with throughout my childhood and adult life, and for them to then play on that and use it to their own advantage, I think is well criminal. It is criminal. It's not just criminal, it is absolutely abuse. So he goes on to say in the next part, my associates. During the relevant period, I was in regular contact and often exchanged voicemail messages with the following individuals. HRH, the Prince of Wales, my brother. He is now first in line to the throne, and due to his position, the press have always been very interested in him. As brothers, we trusted each other with private information we shared. We would often speak over the phone and regularly left voicemails for one another containing very private and sensitive information about our private lives. I'm aware that my brother was also a victim of phone hacking and unlawful information gathering. Princess Diana, my mother, who were obviously very close up until her death in 1997, we were in regular telephone contact when we were not together, especially as I was in boarding school. Private information relating to me would have been present in voicemails left on her phone by members of my family or the royal household. And he goes on to, so he names different people. So he goes on to name Charles, and private information would have been present on voicemails left with Charles. Francis Shan Kidd, my maternal grandmother, Chelsea Davy, ex-girlfriend, Mark Dyer, or Marco as I called him, former royal equerry and still close friend of mine, Helen Asprey, my private secretary, Guy Pelly, an entrepreneur and friend of mine. We've been friends since childhood and been in regular phone contact since we were adolescents. The press were interested in Guy because of his close relationship with me and my brother. Guy and I would often speak over the phone and regularly left voicemails of one another. Jamie Lowther Pinkerton, my former private secretary. So these are all people that they were targeting. Alexandra Shan Pfeiffer, known to me as Tiggy, a close companion and confidant. She was my guardian during childhood, and we have a very close relationship. As my nanny during childhood, she played a central role in my life. And wasn't there rumors that there was a thing between Charles and Tiggy? Also, Paddy Havison, my father's former communications secretary. He held the role from 2004 to 2013. He knew a lot of private information about me and would have exchanged voicemails and other concerning matters about my private life, such as day to day whereabouts and private affairs and issues relating to the royal household. Thomas um, Inskip, a former school friend of mine. Jamie Murray Wells, entrepreneur and close friend. HRH, Princess of Wales, my brother's wife. Catherine and my brother started dating in 2003. We occasionally exchanged voicemails in which we discussed private and sensitive matters regarding our family and personal lives. We would also make plans for social arrangements over voicemail. Natalie Pinkham, a sports television presenter and close friend, and also Carolyn Flack, the late television presenter and friend of mine. We attended a couple of social events together. And during that period, himself and Carolyn exchanged voicemails regarding their personal lives and arrangements to meet up. So he then goes on to my use of my mobile and voicemail. He says, I can't recall exactly when I was first issued with a mobile phone by the institution, but I think it was when I first went to Eton. Let's see. Let's skim over this a little bit. He goes on to say, my voicemails would include incredibly private, sensitive information about my relationships, my operational security, and that of my family, my work, both in the army and as a senior member of the royal family, and also any plans that I had made for myself during off holidays with downtime with friends. So he goes on to unusual mobile activity. I remember on multiple occasions hearing a voicemail for the first time that wasn't new, but I don't remember thinking it was particularly unusual. I would simply put it down to perhaps a technical glitch, as mobile phones were still relevantly new back then, or even just having too many drinks the night before and having forgotten that I listened to it. I wouldn't go into my voicemail unless the little envelope symbol flashed up on my phone, signaling to me that I had a new message. Sometimes the symbol would vanish before I had a chance to listen to the voicemail. Y'all. So sometimes, are you telling me that they would listen to the voicemail before the person even listened to the voicemail? I don't know how long after they'd been listened to that the symbol vanished, presumably straight away. I also distinctly remember people saying to me, did you get my voicemail? On both personal and work related level, I was like, no. And sometimes I would go back to my voicemail and look for it, but still couldn't find it. So, one of the things that they were also doing was deleting voicemails from people's phones. And this was one of the issues during the Millie Dowler case. I also received this was the schoolgirl that was murdered. I also received some missed calls and hang up calls, but again, I don't remember thinking that these were particularly suspicious at the time, although I now understand their significance in terms of phone hacking. I mean, can you imagine how creepy that is? With the benefit of the knowledge I have now gained of the details of how phone hacking took place, I believe both mine and my associates' voicemail messages were hacked by the defendant and that it used other unlawful means to obtain private information about me, including materials that has come from listening to live calls I also made on my landlines. So it goes on to the impact of MGM's intrusion on my life, that he felt that he couldn't trust people. Um, let's see what else. That they seem to know where, like his girlfriends were all the time. And how did they know where she was all the time? But we know that they were also, tracking her. They had a tracking devices on her car. Okay, let's get this bit a little bit more. And then also that a lot of this behavior from the press led to the breakup of his relationship with Chelsea. Okay, I'm going to try and skim some bits that maybe aren't as important. By the way, you can read through all this in absolute detail if you want to later. I'm just trying to get to the most important parts because it is quite long. So he said, additionally, I was upset to discover the amount of suspicious call data and the 13 private investigator payments for Chelsea. So these are the private investigators that they had following and stalking Chelsea and phone hacking Chelsea. Had she not been in a relationship with me, she would never have had to endure such horrific experience at the hands of MGN's journalist. There are even 8 private investigator payments made in relation to my mother, which I have only learnt of since bringing my claim, which makes me physically sick. While on the subject of my mother, I was even more shocked, disgusted, and appalled when I had shown my solicitors 3 handwritten letters from her to the well-known television personality Michael Barrymore. So I mentioned this in yesterday's podcast as well. Diana and Michael had correspondence. She said that she was there for him, if he needed her, but some of the conversations between them had leaked. So he goes on to say that all 3 letters were written during Piers Morgan's editorship of the Daily Mirror, and that he even admits on page 122 of his book entitled The Insider, The Private Diaries of the Scandalous Decade, that the TV comic Barrymore has recently been treated in a clinic for booze and drug addiction, and that I'd heard rumors that Diana had been secretly confronting him. Piers Morgan is such an idiot. And I bet he never thought that some of this stuff would come back to haunt you. Oh my, can I just say thank you so much? Because let me just pause there. Because despite my complete and utter unprofessionalism, running around the streets of Tbilisi trying to find a donut, you have been so generous with the donation. So thank you so much to Miss Beverly W. I don't always like to say your names in full because I don't know, who out of you wants to remain anonymous. But thank you so much to Beverly W for the very generous PayPal, to Media Manix for the coffee. Love your podcast and the way you encourage others to rise and succeed. Thank you for all you do. Yes, I encourage you all to rise and succeed, because isn't that what Megan would encourage us to do? And also to Bonnie McF for the coffee. Thank you so much. I will enjoy that coffee with my donut once I've made the coffee. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so it goes on to talk a little bit more about the correspondence between Diana and Mr. Barrymore, and that Mr. Barrymore had Diana's land number, and it's safe to assume that they were in contact over the phone. Okay, so also just how disgusting, Piers Morgan, almost laughing at, Drew Barrymore's situation with his addiction. These people just have no souls. So it goes on a little bit more to talk about his solicitor's advice regarding the articles of litigation. Right, and then I think it goes on to, he starts talking about the individual articles and how these could have possibly the information for these articles, could have possibly been gotten through phone hacking. So I'm just going to read one of them just as an example. So this one, Harry's time at the bar, from the Mirror, 19th of September 2000, by Jessica Callan, Ava Simpson, and Polly Graham. He says this article contains details of a lunch I had with friends at the Eiffel pub in Chelsea to celebrate my 16th birthday. It was published on page 19 in the Daily Mirror's 3 a.m. column, written by Jessica Callan, Eva Simpson, and Polly Graham. I don't know how anyone would have known it was at this particular pub at this particular time in order to be there taking photographs of me. Based on what I understood at the time of how public engagements worked and the security measures in place for me and my family, I always found these coincidences to be odd. I now understand that the bylined journalists at the 3 a.m. desk as a whole were well known in this litigation for being involved in phone hacking and other forms of unlawful information gathering. My solicitors have advised me that many 3 a.m. articles authored by Ms. Callan have previously been admitted by the defendant to have been a product of unlawful information gathering. What strikes me about this particular article is the comment that a week before I had insisted that one of my PPOs, that protection officers, join me and a friend when we have lunch at Pizza Express. I am unsure of how the defendant's journalist could have been aware of my private investigation between me and my PPO, but it is notable because it's another example of the defendant seeming to know where I was at a particular point in time. Private visits to restaurants with friends were never publicly announced. In fact, our movements were always intended to be kept secret, nor did this kind of thing fall within any official duties. Yet, not only did the defendant seem to know where I was at times, they felt able and entitled to report it to the public without any regard for my security or private life I wished to have, even at the age of 16. So, this is where I'm a little bit confused because, as far as I was always aware, the royal family have MI5, MI6 at their disposal. So you mean to tell me that no one in the royal household went, do you know what? I think we need to do a deeper investigation and pull our resources to find out how the press seems to know where we are at all times. How was that not even seen as, some kind of security breach, um, a possible terrorist threat? I don't understand why this was not taken more seriously by the Royal Protection Officers. It's almost as if, oh, well, it's the UK tabloid press, so, let's just let them get away with it. You mean to tell me that nobody in the royal household, nobody in security, nobody from MI5, nobody from MI6 said, I think we need to call the press in and have a serious conversation about why is it that you know where the royals are, even in unofficial royal engagements in their private time? That wasn't seen as a security risk. That wasn't seen as something that they needed to call the press in and ask them serious questions about. Shocking. So it goes on. I'm assuming these next chapters are pretty much detailing every single one of the articles that Harry claims would have been obtained. Also, the information would have been obtained through unlawful information gathering. Victoria Ward, who I now believe, doesn't she write for the Telegraph or the Times or maybe the Sun? I recognize her name. So let's get straight to the end because I think he says something right at the end after he goes through all of the individual articles. So right at the end here, he says, my Mirror Group claim. I fully accept and agree with the fact that journalists and the media own the public square, in as much as if you're in a position of responsibility and or are funded by the taxpayer, the media should have the power to be able to investigate anyone, anytime for pretty much anything. The problem is that over the last 15 to 20 years, there are now incredibly powerful media companies who masquerade as journalists and who have, quite frankly, hijacked journalistic privileges for their own personal gain and agenda. It is an unbelievably dangerous place. I believe it doesn't matter whether you're a public figure at this point, whoever you are, if you're of interest to the press at the time, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're in private or if you're in public, you are a target. You become a victim of their system. They claim to hold public figures to account, but refuse to hold themselves accountable. Amen. They are supposedly policing society. Who on earth is policing them? When even the government is scared of alienating them because position is power. It's incredibly worrying for the entire UK. Finally, someone said it. Finally, someone said it. And a royal at that. Oh my God. Those of us with sense have been screaming this from the rooftops our entire lives. Murdoch and Rothermere has the United Kingdom by the balls. I will actually go as far. It's going to be controversial. I'll go as far as saying, do you know what? You're when you go to the ballot box to vote, a hell of a lot of your vote doesn't even have any power because of the amount of power the press has. And you saw that with the way that things went with Brexit and the way they continue to, you know, have the minds of a lot of people in the UK hijacked. I mean, it was literally the Daily Mail that got Liz Truss into office. Insanity. That line right there is history. It is incredibly worrying for the entire UK. And what's worrying is that the UK, or not enough people in the UK, seem to see this. Whew, Harry came out swinging, and I can feel the swing. You can probably hear it in my voice. So he goes on to say, in my view, in order to save journalism as a profession, journalists need to expose those people in the media that have stolen or hijacked the privileges and powers of the press and have used illegal or unlawful means for their own gain and agendas. In the same vein, I am bringing this claim not because I hate the tabloid press or even necessarily a section of it, but in order to properly hold the people who have hijacked those privileges which come with being a member of the press to account for their actions. It has become a huge problem of which I have a unique perspective and experience, perhaps having a front row seat to it. Because they have showed no willingness to change, I feel that I need to make sure this unlawful behavior is exposed. Because obviously, I don't want anybody else going through the same thing that I've been going through on a personal level, but also on a national level, as the moment our country, sorry, on a national level, as at the moment our country is judged globally by the state of our press and government, both of which I believe are at rock bottom. Democracy fails when your press fails to scrutinize and hold the government accountable and instead chooses to get in bed with them so they can ensure the status quo. I may not have a role in the institution, but as a member of the British royal family and as a soldier upholding important values, I feel there's a responsibility to expose the criminal behavior in the name of public interest. The country and the British public deserve to know the depths of what was actually happening and indeed now. So happening then and indeed now. We are all better off for it. So he goes on to the consequence of him, bringing this claim is being bullied by the likes of Piers Morgan. My view is, how can anyone possibly trust a media organization that enjoys the liberties of free press when their own legal people and board covers up the truth? When they have the powers that they have, and where even the police and government are scared to hold them accountable or seek justice, they can truly believe they are above the law. And if they're above the law, then it's the general public that suffer. It's really that simple. It is. There should not be a revolving door of criminality between the press, the police, the government, and the royals. There should be a strong sense of accountability in each of those individual institutions, and a sense of accountability where they hold each other accountable. Instead, there's a revolving door of criminality and clowns. It does make you feel completely helpless and hopeless. And if that's how it feels to be someone in my position, having grown up with advisors and secretaries, and to try and manage press relations, I can only imagine what it feels like for anyone else. And remember, folks, that one of the reasons why it is so difficult to hold these people accountable is because it's so expensive. It is financially impossible to hold these people accountable. And the only accountability that you may get, if you're lucky, is a payout. And that's why Harry is one of the few people that has taken it all the way until the end, because he's got the pockets for it. He says, if I had known this cover up was going on back in the day, I would have been disgusted and would have tried to seek some kind of justice, although I suspect I wouldn't have gotten very far, of course, being in the royal institution. He says, unfortunately, I'm sorry, however, having experienced what I have over the last 6 years in terms of the constant harassment, online and off, intimidation and abuse that my wife and I have suffered at the hands of the tabloids, this sort of appalling behavior does not surprise me. Unfortunately, without proper press regulation, which the current government clearly has no appetite for because their friends in the press said so, it's only going to get worse. Oh my God. Do you know something? I want someone tomorrow to ask Rishi Sunak about that line right there. Unfortunately, without proper press regulation, which the current government clearly have no appetite for because their friends in the press said so, it's only going to get worse. Rishi Sunak, the robot prime minister. Let's listen to what his programming tells him how to respond to that. Wow. Harry, you are a true king. Finding out about this level of cover up is what makes me want to see my MGM claim through to the end so people can really understand what happened. The fact that it was not just the journalists who were carrying out unlawful activity, but also those in power who were turning a blind eye to it as to ensure that it would continue unabated, and who then tried to cover it up when the game was up is appalling. The fact that they're all ganging up to protect each other like they did after Leveson is the most disturbing part of it all, especially as they're the mothership of online trolling. Trolls react and mobilize the stories they create. People have died as a result, and people will continue to off themselves, unalive themselves, when they can't see any other way out. How much more blood will stain their typing fingers before someone can put a stop to the madness? And do you remember Cameron was in power at the time when this whole Leveson thing was going on, the inquiry into phone hacking. One of the major players in the phone hacking scandal was Rebecca Brooks. I did a whole video on Rebecca Brooks. Rebecca Brooks is also friends with Cameron. She's also friends with Jeremy Clarkson. I believe actually when Rebecca Brooks remarried, Clarkson was at her wedding. They're all part of this little social set in their little, upper class village where they live. And Brooks, of course, is the almost like a daughter to Rupert Murdoch. So that's what he's talking about when he says that they're all just protecting each other and slapping each other's backs, because they really are just this club that were just protecting each other, and that's why Rebecca Brooks got a slap on the wrist, because the people who were in power, who were meant to be holding her accountable, were going to her wedding. In conclusion, this is Harry's conclusion. My solicitors have shown me a witness statement from the Daily Mirror's former reporter, Jane Kerr, who I understand is bylined in only 10 of the 50 selected articles about which I complain. It would appear from her comments that in most cases she can neither recall the story nor its source. I have also been shown a witness statement by Martin Fricker, who is not bylined in any of the selected articles, but does confirm that he neither recollects the story to which he is bylined, which is outlined in section 50, nor its source. Some recollections may vary in going on there. As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why I'm bringing this claim is to hold people to account for what they have done, so that they can't hide behind their own institution or organization. As I'm subjecting myself to the court process, I fully expect the journalists in question to also come along and explain how they wrote these stories. On the one hand, MGM admit that phone hacking and other unlawful information gathering went on. On the other, they deny liability for every claim that's brought against them, including my own. They admit they're doing it, but they deny the victims' claims. They admit people were doing it, but they deny the victims' claims. Or one of the ways they've tried to offset the blame is by saying, well, there were private investigators that were doing this. It wasn't us, but you hired those private investigators. The position makes no sense, and I am determined to get to the bottom of it once and for all. He ends by saying, I believe that the facts stated in this witness statement are true. I understand that proceedings for contempt of court may be brought against anyone who makes or causes to be made a false statement in document verified by a statement of truth without an honest belief in its truth. And Harry has told the truth and nothing but the truth. And so bravely and boldly, in a way that nobody in the upper echelons of the British establishment has ever done, going as far as calling out the government. You know, Harry is really putting his neck out. Just wow. I'm stunned. I'm truly stunned. Right. And yeah, those are the list of some of the articles that have been brought forward. Right. I think I have gone on for long enough. My voice is starting to croak and my donut is probably cold at this point. Thank you so much. I will read through a couple of your comments before we get going. But I also believe that Baron is probably about to come on. So I'll just let you go over and continue over. Is Baron's on at the moment? Let's see. Yeah, do you know what? Baron's on at the moment, so I'm just gonna end it there, okay? Thank you so much, everyone. Go over to Baron's if you want to continue the conversation. I mean, what else is there to say? Harry has said it all, and this is only day one. Now, I don't know what the legal proceedings are. I'll just end by saying this. I don't know what the legal proceedings are, but it would be brilliant if every single one of these journalists had to be brought to stand in the court of law and answer for their crimes. That is what I would love to see. And with that, round of applause to Harry. Day 2, amazing. Here is the link again. This is the link to buy me a coffee. But here is the link to, let me just copy it again. Here's the link if you want to read it in detail. And I will see you all tomorrow. Okay, Tiger Hub, how long is Harry in the UK to testify? Do you know what? I actually don't know. I guess we'll find out tomorrow and in the coming days, okay? See you all tomorrow. Ciao.
Lonely, yeah. 1, 2, 3, pasa el guaro. Y sin estrés, que caro. Te gustan los chicos malos. Y se te ve que ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Y ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan. Facilito las anota. Y ella se le ve la nota. Que se mueve como loca. Yeah. Esa Julieta no necesita su Romeo. A esas caderas todo le creo. Ya está, esta manera de perreo. Bájale al fuego porque esto se puso feo. Aquí un paisita con la de Ponce. Ella la mala y apelando el bronce. Yo flow Maluma, tu flow Beyoncé. Yo pega esto pa' que sientas el roce. Con su flow, gemelita de G-Lo, de G-Lo, de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Con su flow, gemelita de G-Lo, de G-Lo, de G-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, reggaetón, ton. Ella como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Ella como Jordan, facilito las anota. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Yo le doy un flow a mi bebé la pupi. Le doy un guarito pa' que deje el tutti frutti. Pa' que no se estrese y solo me va a hacer booty. Izquierda, derecha con su movimiento sutil. Nos moquea como lo haya en el ring. nunca pasa moda como la era de los memes. De toda la peli ella es la mejor sin. La bebé está cara y eso que no usa Supreme. Con su flow, con su flow, con su flow. Gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, ton, reggaetón, ton, ton. Con su flow, con su flow, con su flow. Gemelita de J-Lo, de J-Lo, de J-Lo. Nunca le dice que no, a que no, a que no. A perrele reggaetón, ton, ton, reggaetón, ton, ton. Ella es como Jordan, wow, facilito las anotas. Ella se le ve la nota, que se mueve como loca. Ella es como Jordan, facilito las anotas. Ella se le ve la nota.